Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are embarking on a journey into the massive, kind of chaotic, and just unimaginably beautiful web of life on Earth. We're going to explore exactly how scientists make sense of all this wild diversity, and, why understanding these patterns is absolutely critical for our own survival. So, let's dive right in.
Have you ever wondered why some plants can just shrug off months of drought, while, your houseplant might wither if you forget to water it for just a few days? Or how certain insects can protect an entire crop while others literally destroy it overnight? Well, nature is completely full of these incredible, highly specialized survival strategies.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll cover the web of life, India's biodiversity hotspots, evolution and ancient traditions, thinking like a scientist, rules of classification, and then we'll wrap up with a really fascinating hornbill case study.
Let's start with Section 1, the web of life, nature's giant engine.
When you hear the word biodiversity, it's super easy to just think of a long list of animals, right? But it is so much more than that. It's this intricate, highly interconnected web where literally every single thread matters. And life doesn't just hang out in comfortable places. It is adapted to conquer pretty much every extreme on this planet, from a harsh, sun-baked desert all the way to a freezing, ice-covered Arctic landscape.
This interconnected web functions like a giant engine. Think about it. Microscopic algae in the oceans are out there quietly releasing most of the oxygen we breathe. Down in the dirt, fungi and bacteria are basically acting as nature's recycling plant, decomposing waste to make the soil fertile. And up in the air, birds, bees, and bats are pollinating the flowers that eventually become our food. The takeaway here? Every single organism has a job to do.
Moving on to Section 2, India's biodiversity hotspots, a global powerhouse.
Because of its incredibly varied geography, think of the mighty mountains in the north, deserts in the west, rainforests in the northeast, and those massive coastlines. India is a true global powerhouse when it comes to biodiversity. And within these hotspots, you find endemic species. Now, these are species restricted to very specific particular regions. You literally won't find them existing naturally anywhere else on the planet. This makes them incredibly unique, but it also makes them highly vulnerable. If their specific habitat is lost, the whole species could be lost for good. Meet two absolutely stunning examples of this endemism, the lion-tailed macaque and the Nilgiri tar. These magnificent animals are endemic only to India. Seriously, just look at the distinct mane on that macaque. It's incredible. Protecting habitats like the Western Ghats is really the only way to ensure these animals remain part of our world's food webs.
And hey, endemism isn't just about animals. Check out this fascinating flora, the Indian pitcher plant, or Nepenthes cassiana. This carnivorous plant has evolved a highly localized, specialized way to survive by trapping its food. Definitely a terrible day for a bug, but a perfect example of how life adapts beautifully to very specific local conditions.
All right, Section 3, Evolution and Ancient Traditions, Forces Shaping Diversity.
So, how exactly did life become so wonderfully varied? Well, biodiversity doesn't just happen overnight. Small differences give certain individuals an edge in surviving and reproducing. Over countless generations and a huge span of time, these tiny advantages accumulate, and they give rise to entirely new forms of life that are completely adapted to their surroundings.
What's fascinating is that long before modern science formulated the formal rules of ecology, ancient cultures understood these systems intuitively. Just look at ancient Indian traditions, like the Sangam Tenai classification of landscapes, or the cultural protection of sacred groves. These weren't just stories. They were sophisticated ecological frameworks that successfully preserved diverse habitats for centuries. They basically knew, from the start, that human survival depended on protecting the land.
Now for Section 4, Thinking like a Scientist, Looking for Patterns.
When you're faced with a massive, kind of chaotic natural world, how do you even begin to understand it? Well, you have to become an observer. You have to act almost like a detective looking for patterns. Take a look at this vibrant forest scene. Just take a moment to scan it. What animals do you see? Some are perched high up in the trees, while others are down on the forest floor. But more importantly, notice how some animals, like the eagle, are clearly built for the daylight, while others, like the owl and the bat, are just waking up as night falls.
To make sense of all that visual chaos, scientists organize their observations into structured data. By tracking the organism where it's seen, when it's active, and its visible features, we can actually start grouping them. For example, an eagle and a tiger might both be grouped as carnivores based on their eating habits, right? and changing our criteria totally changes the groupings. That's actually the foundational step of biological classification.
Which brings us to Section 5, Rules of Classification, Organizing Life.
Now that we've practiced gathering data, how do biologists officially decide who goes in which group? Well, they use a highly structured, layered approach based on 7 key criteria. They start out broad, looking at external features like shape and size. Then they go deeper. How does it get its food? What do its internal organs look like? They go all the way down to a microscopic level, examining cell structure and reproduction. And finally, they look at genetic similarities using DNA. It's like putting together a giant puzzle.
To understand just how deep this really goes, let's look at criterion 4, cell structure. Classification distinguishes between organisms made of just one cell, unicellular, and those made of many, like us, which are multicellular. It even looks at the complexity of the cell itself, separating simple prokaryote cells from more complex eukaryote cells. It is just incredibly precise. So why go through all this trouble? Because similar features suggest organisms evolved from common ancestors. Classification isn't just about sorting nature into a filing cabinet to keep things tidy. No, it is literally mapping out our shared family tree. It's telling the evolutionary story of life on Earth.
Finally, Section 6, the Hornbill Case Study, Real Conservation.
So, how is all this useful in the real world? Let's look at exactly how scientific classification directly impacts conservation. Welcome to the Paki Tiger Reserve in Arunachal Pradesh, India. What's absolutely amazing about this single forest is that scientists have recorded nearly 300 bird species there. To put that into perspective, the entirety of India has about 1,300. That makes Paki an absolute treasure trove of biodiversity. And the undisputed stars of Paki are the hornbills. The reserve actually supports 4 distinct species: the rufous-necked, the oriental pied, the great, and the wreathed hornbills. Now here's where classification comes into play. These aren't just birds. Because we can classify them into 4 distinct species, we realize they each have slightly different habits. They all require large, old trees with specific cavities to nest in, and they feed on very specific types of fruits found in totally different parts of the forest.
Which leads us to this critical question. Why does this matter? Well, by classifying and mapping the exact distribution of these 4 different species, scientists can pinpoint exactly which specific trees, fruits, and ecosystems need to be protected. If we just group them all together as birds, we might end up saving the wrong trees and totally lose the species. Classification gives us the precision we need to actually save ecosystems.
And that brings us to our final thought for today. If something as meticulous as classifying 4 types of hornbills can provide the blueprint for saving an entire ancient forest, what else is out there waiting to be understood? What else can the intricate patterns of the web of life teach us about our own survival on this planet? It's a vast, beautiful mystery out there, and the more we structure our understanding of it, the more clearly we can see our own place within it. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.